rookie reporter in a storm-bent port uncovered poison disguised as dessert, then hijacked a city's silence before dawn could bury her. Aya Venkatesh spent her nights feeding damp notes into a failing newsroom fan, while Visakhapatnam's harbor exhaled diesel, salt, and secrets. She was not the star journalist with polished shoes and government sources, just a stringer paid late and forgotten early. Her byline, when it appeared at all, sat cramped beneath ads for loans, tonic, and Miracle Steel cookware. Most mornings, she walked home with ink on her wrists and the stale ache of being useful to everyone except herself. Then one midnight, a dock worker with trembling fingers slid her a torn manifest and said moon-cake cartons were arriving heavier than sugar ever should. On the paper, 3 shipment codes repeated beside chemical abbreviations, and one line had been scrubbed so hard the fibers looked skinned. Aya followed the clue to the harbor and watched forklift lights comb through rain while men in clean shirts guarded bakery labels like holy relics. The boxes carried cheerful rabbits and festival lanterns, yet gray liquid dripped from one cracked corner and hissed against the concrete. By sunrise, a slick rainbow spread into the drainage channel that fed the fishing quarter, where children chased crabs beside their breakfast. She understood the shape of the crime before she could prove it. Bribed officials, mislabeled cargo, poisoned runoff, and an entire neighborhood treated as disposable. The problem was not only danger, but invisibility, because powerful people always count on beginners being easy to erase. Her editor glanced at the manifest, paled, and told her to forget it, unless she enjoyed becoming tomorrow's missing person notice. On the walk back, Aya saw harbor mothers washing silver fish in water, filmed with an oily shine, and forgetting became impossible. Fear arrived honestly after that, not as drama, but as tiny domestic calculations about who would notice if she stopped coming home. She lived above a pharmacy, paid rent in uneven stacks, and kept one emergency number written inside a matchbox because her phone screen kept dying. That weakness became her first strategy because people ignore what looks broken, cheap, and already defeated. She borrowed a torn shirt, slung a tray of dead headphones around her neck, and returned to the docks as a hawker nobody would remember. Men waved her away with irritated hands. Customs clerks laughed at her fake sales pitch, and guards stared past her as if poverty itself made her transparent. Under a fish smell kiosk near the loading lane, she found her hiding place beside cracked ice, rusted hooks, and a drain buzzing with flies. She wore an old hospital IV wristband because paper got wet, but plastic survived rain, sweat, and quick grabs. Every time a crate moved, she copied the cargo codes in tiny numbers along the wristband's edge, turning medical trash into a ledger. She memorized guard rotations by the rhythm of cigarette sparks and tea breaks, because patterns are locks that open if watched long enough. When one supervisor pocketed envelopes before waving a tanker through inspection, Aya marked the time against the matching shipment code. She never tried to collect everything at once because greed ruins evidence the same way panic ruins breath. Instead, she built proof like a seawall, one careful stone at a time, layering codes, dates, names, runoff photographs, and plate numbers. She bought fried peanuts from the same stall each night so the vendor accepted her presence without curiosity and began mentioning which officers came unusually late. She befriended ferry loaders by fixing their cracked charger cable with tape, then listened while they complained about mooncake shipments rerouted during inspections. Information came not from cinematic breakthroughs, but from staying longer than comfort and asking one question after another with a forgettable face. Then the machine pushed back. A man on a scooter followed her to the pharmacy stairs, pretending to check messages while his mirror kept finding her door. Her landlord warned that 2 visitors had asked whether the journalist girl still worked nights and whether she had family nearby. In the newsroom bathroom, she vomited from nerves, washed her face, and understood that exposure had already begun before publication. That realization changed her second strategy. If they could reach her alone, she would make the evidence impossible to kill alone. She copied every photo and code onto 3 cheap memory cards hidden inside a rice tin, a sandal heel, and a rolled newspaper. She sent anonymous parcels to a fisheries professor, an environmental lawyer, and a retired radio mechanic known for hating corrupt ministers. None of them had the full story, but each held a piece sharp enough to cut if she vanished. A single point of failure is not bravery. It is a gift to the people betting on your collapse. Aya still needed the final link, proof that harbor runoff inside the festive cartons matched the poison spreading into public drains. During a monsoon downpour, she watched workers unload a split box behind a shuttered warehouse and siphon its sludge into barrels marked cleaning solution. She scraped residue into a medicine vial, nearly slipped beneath a reversing truck, and hid the sample inside the tray beneath worthless earphones. The fisheries professor tested it quietly and found heavy metals and toxins high enough to wreck breeding grounds and poison catch lines downstream. Now the story had teeth, and the city's most comfortable men began smelling blood in the water without knowing whose. A plainclothes officer visited the paper and casually asked why a rookie stringer had become so interested in shipping clerks and drainage maps. Her editor, terrified and ashamed, told Aya the paper could not print the story without national backing they would never risk. For 1 hour, despair made the whole investigation feel childish, as if truth needed permission from richer desks before it could exist. Then the cyclone warnings began. Ferries were being tied down, power lines swayed like ropes, and the harbor prepared for another night of blackout and confusion. Aya saw what emergencies reveal better than speeches. When normal systems go dark, people suddenly listen to whatever still speaks. She found the retired radio mechanic in his workshop of wires, dust, and saints, and asked whether a ferry loudspeaker could carry one truth farther than a newspaper. By evening, they had rigged her recorder into a hacked public address line used for boarding calls, weather alerts, and lost baggage notices. Rain slashed sideways across the harbor as the city power failed, leaving only generator coughs and lightning bleaching the ship's white. Aya stood inside the ferry office with water climbing the doorway and pressed play with a hand that shook harder than the building. Her voice rolled over black water and shuttered stalls, naming shipment codes, chemical findings, bribed clearances, drainage routes, and the neighborhoods being poisoned. She repeated where copies of the evidence had been sent and which offices would be liable if anything happened to her overnight. Windows opened. People stepped onto balconies with lanterns. Fishermen under tarps looked toward the harbor as if a foghorn had started telling the truth. Someone recorded the broadcast and pushed it through darkened phone networks the moment signal flickered back. By midnight, the scandal was no longer Aya against a ring of officials. It was the whole city comparing names and dates aloud. Corrupt men thrive when fear feels private, but panic moves upstream fast when citizens suddenly share the same evidence. Through the storm, harbor workers blocked warehouse exits with handcarts, residents guarded drains with flashlights, and local doctors warned families away from contaminated water. The environmental lawyer released the lab report before dawn, and the fisheries professor confirmed the poisoning on a regional station once power returned. Police who had ignored quiet complaints arrived to a shoreline already awake, angry, and impossible to brush aside. Arrests began as morning lifted over the port, pale and merciless, while officers led away supervisors, clerks, and a customs official still clutching wet papers. Mooncake cartons were split open for cameras, and gray sludge slumped out beneath smiling festival rabbits, obscene in the new light. Aya stood in the crowd, soaked to the bone, watching fishermen raise their stained nets like courtroom exhibits before the entire city. She thought the headline was corruption exposed, but the deeper truth hit harder and quieter than any siren. Her first true headline was that she had refused to disappear when disappearing would have been easier, safer, and socially rewarded. Winning did not make her fearless. It proved fear can be organized into steps small enough to finish before dawn. If you are facing something rotten and larger than you, begin where the powerful think you are too insignificant to matter. Write everything down while it is fresh. Break big danger into small proofs and spread the truth so widely that harming you cannot erase it. Study routines, protect copies, recruit unlikely allies, and remember that systems built on secrecy often collapse the moment ordinary people can picture the evidence. Aya's victory was not magic, luck, or destiny in a cinematic coat. It was observation sharpened into method, loneliness transformed into preparation, and one young woman deciding that being overlooked could become her loudest weapon.